The lights of Kepler Station buzzed and hummed like angry insects as thousands of beings moved through its metal corridors. Giant Vorthak traders stomped past on four thick legs while their purple skin gleamed under the harsh station lights. Tall Zephyrians floated by like living glass sculptures that sang in voices like wind chimes. Gas-formed nebulans drifted through special tubes in the walls while their cloudy bodies sparkled with tiny stars dotting the lower decks where the air recyclers worked loudest and the lights flickered most often. Something small and quick darted between the massive support beams. Zara pressed her thin body against the cold metal wall as two security guards walked past. Their heavy boots made the floor shake under her bare feet. She held her breath until they were gone. She was hungry again. The small piece of nutrition bar she had found yesterday was long gone, and her stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside. Her pale blue skin looked almost gray now, and her large violet eyes had dark circles under them. Once her people had been proud and strong, but that was before the great star near. Their homeworld had exploded and swallowed everything they loved. Zara remembered her mother's stories about the beautiful crystal cities and the floating gardens that grew in the purple sky. She remembered the songs her father sang about the old knowledge that their people had kept for thousands of years, but those stories felt like dreams now. All the Catherians were gone except for a few scattered across the galaxy like dust in the wind. The Galactic Council had made it official 3 years ago. They called her people a non-viable species, which meant no help and no hope. The fancy words meant that nobody cared if the last Catherians lived or died. They were just taking up space that could be used by more important beings. Zara crawled through a maintenance shaft that led to the garbage disposal area. Sometimes the alien food processors threw away things that were still good enough to eat. She had learned which alien foods would make her sick and which ones would keep her alive for another day. The Vorthak food was too spicy and burned her mouth. The Zephyrian energy crystals tasted like metal and hurt her teeth. But sometimes she found nebulan protein pods that were not too bad if she could get past the smell. She dropped down into the disposal bay and started looking through the newest pile of trash. Her small hands moved quickly through the garbage as she listened for the sound of boots on metal. Getting caught here meant a beating from the security guards and maybe a few days, locked in the detention center where they forgot to feed her. A piece of wrapped food caught her eye. It was different from the usual alien garbage. The wrapper had strange symbols on it that she did not recognize. She sniffed it carefully. It smelled sweet and rich like nothing she had ever found before. Her mouth filled with water as she imagined how good it might taste, but before she could unwrap it, loud voices echoed from the corridor above. Security was coming and they sounded angry about something. Zara stuffed the wrapped food inside her torn shirt and looked for a way out. The main exit was blocked, but there was a small air vent near the ceiling that led to the upper levels. She climbed up the wall using the pipes and cables like a ladder. Her people had always been good climbers. Back when they had trees to climb and cliffs to scale, the vent was just big enough for her small body to squeeze through. She crawled through the darkness until she reached another opening. Zara dropped down into a busy corridor on the main level where all the important aliens did their business. This was dangerous territory for her. Down in the lower decks, the security guards just chased her away, but up here they might arrest her for being where she did not belong. She tried to stay close to the walls and move like a shadow, but there were too many beings walking around. A massive Vorthak bumped into her with his thick leg and knocked her to the ground. He looked down at her with his 4 yellow eyes and made a disgusted sound. "Filthy little scavenger," he growled in Galactic Standard. "Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." Other beings stopped to stare at her. A group of Zephyrians sang something that sounded like laughter, but felt cold and sharp. 2 nebulans floating nearby sparkled brighter as they whispered to each other about the pathetic little alien on the floor. Zara scrambled to her feet and tried to run, but more security guards were coming from both directions. Their hands moved to the shock sticks on their belts. She looked around for another escape route, but the corridor was too wide and too open. There was nowhere to hide and nowhere to run. The wrapped food fell out of her shirt and rolled across the floor. One of the guards saw it and his face got red with anger. Stealing food was a serious crime on the station, even if it came from the garbage. Zara knew she was in real trouble now. Then something unexpected happened. A new voice spoke from behind the crowd of aliens. "Excuse me, what seems to be the problem here?" The voice was calm and steady, different from the harsh sounds that most aliens made when they talked. Zara looked up from where she crouched on the floor and saw something she had never seen before. The being standing behind the crowd was not very tall and had smooth pink skin and dark hair on top of its head. It walked on two legs like she did and had two arms and two eyes in all the right places. This had to be one of the humans she had heard whispered about in the lower decks. The other species talked about them sometimes with voices full of confusion and annoyance. They said humans were strange and emotional and did things that made no sense to anyone else. The security guard pointed his shock stick at Zara. "Just removing some trash from the main corridors, human. Nothing for you to worry about." The human stepped forward and Zara could see his face better now. His eyes were brown and kind, and he did not look at her like she was something dirty that needed to be swept away. He looked at her like she was a real person. "That's not trash," the human said quietly. "That's a child." "It's a Cytherian," the guard replied like that explained everything. "Non-viable species. Council regulations say we have to keep them out of the public areas." The human's face changed and his jaw got tight. "Council regulations also say that all sentient beings have the right to safe passage through public areas. I've read the legal codes." He bent down and picked up the wrapped food from the floor. Zara's heart sank as she watched her precious find disappear into his hands. But then he did something that made her world stop spinning. He held the food out to her. "I think you dropped this," he said, and the words came out in perfect Cytherian. Not the broken pigeon that some traders used, but real Cytherian with all the right sounds and rhythms that reminded her of home. Zara stared at him with her mouth open. Nobody had spoken her language to her in 3 years. She had almost forgotten how beautiful it sounded when someone said the words correctly. "You speak Cytherian?" she whispered back in her own language. "A little," he replied with a smile that made tiny lines appear around his eyes. "I studied it in school. Your people had such beautiful poetry, had past tense, because everyone knew the Cytherians were finished." But somehow hearing him say it did not hurt as much as usual. He said it like he was talking about something precious that had been lost, not something worthless that had been thrown away. The security guards were getting impatient. "Look, human, we appreciate your concern, but this creature is a public health hazard. It's been living in the waste systems and stealing food. We need to remove it before it spreads disease or causes trouble." The human stood up and faced the guards. He was not as big as they were, but something about the way he held himself made them take a step back. "This young lady is not a health hazard, and she's not causing trouble. She's just trying to survive in a place where nobody wants to help her. Now I suggest you find something better to do than bully children." "She's not a child, she's an adult Cytherian," the guard said, but he did not sound as sure as before. "She's small because she's malnourished, not because she's fully grown. And even if she was an adult, that wouldn't give you the right to treat her like garbage." The crowd of aliens was getting bigger as more beings stopped to watch the argument. Most of them looked annoyed that their day was being interrupted by drama about a worthless Cytherian. A few seemed amused by the strange human who was making such a fuss over nothing. "What's your name?" the human asked Zara in Cytherian. "Zara," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Jake Morrison, captain of the cargo ship New Horizons. Are you hurt, Zara?" She shook her head but kept staring at him like he might disappear if she looked away. Nobody had asked her name in so long that she had almost forgotten anyone cared what she was called. Jake turned back to the guards. "Captain Morrison requesting safe passage escort for my guest to my ship. I assume the station still honors basic diplomatic courtesy for registered vessel commanders." The head guard looked confused and angry. "Your guest? You can't just claim random aliens as your guests to get them out of trouble. I can claim anyone I want as my guest as long as I take responsibility for their actions while they're under my protection." Check your own regulations if you don't believe me. Jake held out his hand to Zara. She stared at it for a long moment, trying to understand what was happening. In 3 years on this station, nobody had ever offered to help her. Nobody had ever spoken kindly to her. Nobody had ever looked at her like she mattered. She reached out with her own small hand and let him help her to her feet. His skin was warm and his grip was gentle but strong. He did not pull away when he touched her, even though her hands were dirty and her clothes were torn and smelly. "Come on," he said in Catherian. "Let's get you something proper to eat and a safe place to rest. We can talk more on my ship." As they walked through the crowd together, Zara heard the aliens muttering to each other in their own languages. She caught words like stupid and waste of time and typical human nonsense. But for the first time in years, she did not care what they thought about her. Someone had chosen to care about her when nobody else would. Someone had seen her as a person instead of a problem, and that someone was walking beside her right now, keeping her safe just because it was the right thing to do. Jake's ship was not the biggest or fanciest vessel docked at Kepler Station, but it felt like a palace to Zara. The corridors were clean and warm and smelled like recycled air instead of garbage and chemicals. Real lights hung from the ceiling, instead of the flickering tubes she was used to in the lower decks. "Lisa, we have a guest," Jake called out as they entered the main living area. A woman with short black hair looked up from a datapad she was reading. Her dark eyes moved from Jake to Zara and back again with a look that said she had seen this kind of thing before. "Another stray?" Lisa asked with a small smile that took the sting out of her words. "Her name is Zara and she's been living rough on the station for 3 years, Jake replied. "She needs food and medical attention and a safe place to stay while we figure out what to do next." Lisa set down her datapad and walked over to get a better look at Zara. She did not stare at her, like the other aliens did, as if she was some kind of strange animal in a cage. Instead, she looked at her the way doctors looked at patients, checking for injuries and illness. "She's severely malnourished and probably dehydrated too," Lisa said. "When did you last have a real meal, honey?" Zara did not understand all the human words, but she recognized the gentle tone that Lisa used. It was the same tone her mother had used when she was small and scared. "She speaks Catherian," Jake explained. "I don't think her galactic standard is very good." Lisa nodded and disappeared into another room. She came back with a cup of water and a small white tablet. "Vitamin supplement," she explained to Jake. "Should help with the malnutrition until we can get some real food in her." Zara took the cup with both hands and drank the water slowly. It was cleaner and colder than anything she had tasted in months. The tablet was bitter, but she swallowed it without complaint. "I'll send a message to the other captains," Jake said. "There might be someone heading toward Catherian space who could give her a ride home." "There is no home," Zara said quietly in Galactic Standard. The words came out rough and broken, but she had to make them understand. "Home is gone, all gone, Jake." And Lisa looked at each other with expressions that Zara had never seen on alien faces before. It took her a moment to realize what she was seeing. They looked sad. Not annoyed or disgusted or impatient, but actually sad that her people were gone. "I'm sorry," Jake said in Catherian. "I should have realized." "The stellar collapse 5 years ago," Zara nodded. "Mother and father and little brother and everyone? All gone when the star got angry and ate our world?" "Are there others?" Lisa asked. "Other survivors?" "Maybe, scattered like seeds in the wind. But the council says we are finished. Non-viable species. No help, no hope, no point in keeping us alive." Jake's face got red and his hands made fists. "The council is wrong. Every species has value. Every person has the right to live and be safe and be treated with dignity." His words were so different from everything Zara had heard for 3 years that she almost could not believe them. In her experience, beings only had value if they were useful or powerful or numerous enough to matter. A dying race of scattered refugees had no value at all. "Why do you care?" she asked him. "I have nothing to give you. No money, no trade goods, no useful skills. Why waste your time on someone like me?" Jake sat down in a chair across from her so they were at the same height. Because you're a person and you're in trouble and I can help. That's reason enough. But your own species comes first, right? Humans help humans before they help strangers. Sometimes, Jake admitted. But being human means caring about others even when they're not human. Especially when they're not human, because they might not have anyone else to care about them. Lisa brought out a plate of food that smelled better than anything Zara could remember. There were soft pieces of bread and some kind of protein that had been cooked with spices. There were even pieces of fruit that looked fresh and ripe. It's human food, Lisa explained. Should be safe for your digestive system based on what I know about Catherian biology. Zara ate slowly, trying to make each bite last as long as possible. The food was rich and filling and made her stomach feel warm and content for the first time in months. As she ate, Jake asked her questions about her life and her people and how she had survived alone for so long. She told him about the maintenance shafts, where she slept, and the garbage she searched for food, and the security guards who chased her, and sometimes beat her when they caught her. She told them about the other aliens who stepped over her like she was not there, and the council representatives who spoke about her people like they were already dead. But you're not dead, Lisa said firmly. You're here, and you're alive, and you matter. The Galactic Trade Federation is having their annual meeting next month, Jake said. I could take you there. Maybe we can find someone who's willing to listen, someone who can help locate other survivors. Zara shook her head. They will not listen to me. I am nobody. Just a scavenger living in the walls like a pest. Then we'll make them listen, Jake replied. Humans are good at being loud when we need to be. Over the next few hours, Jake showed Zara around his ship and introduced her to the rest of his small crew. There was Pete, the engineer who spoke in a slow drawl and had gentle hands. When he showed her how the ship's systems worked, there was Susan, the pilot who had traveled to more star systems than most aliens would see in their lifetimes. Each of them treated her like she belonged there, like she was a welcome guest instead of a burden they had to tolerate. They gave her clean clothes and a real bed to sleep in and more food than she could eat. But most importantly, they listened to her stories and asked her questions and acted like her answers mattered. That night, as Zara lay in a soft bed with clean sheets and a full stomach for the first time in years, she heard Jake and Lisa talking in the next room. This is bigger than just one refugee, Jake was saying. If the Catherians are being treated this badly, how many other species are suffering in silence? How many other individuals are being ignored because their people are considered non-viable? What can we do about it? Lisa asked. We're just one small cargo ship. We can't save everyone. Maybe not everyone, Jake replied, but we can save her. And maybe saving one person will lead to saving more. Sometimes that's how change starts, one person at a time. 3 days after Jake had rescued Zara from the station corridors, everything changed. She was helping Pete organize tools in the engine room when Lisa's voice came over the ship's communication system, sharp and worried. Jake, we have a problem. Station Administrator Thex Gwyn is demanding to come aboard. He has security with him and he does not look happy. Jake appeared in the engine room doorway with his jaw set in a hard line. Stay here with Pete, he told Zara in Catherian. Let me handle this. But Zara had lived too long as prey to hide when predators came hunting. She followed Jake to the main airlock where Thex Gwyn waited with 4 armed guards. The administrator was a massive Vorthek whose purple skin had turned darker with anger. Captain Morrison, Thex Gwyn rumbled in his deep voice. You are harboring station property without proper authorization. Station property? Jake's voice was dangerously quiet. Are you referring to my guest? The Catherian belongs to station jurisdiction. It has been living illegally in our waste systems and stealing food from our disposal units. We have the right to confiscate it and process it according to station regulations. Zara felt ice form in her stomach. She knew what station regulations meant for beings like her. At best, she would be shipped off to some distant world where no one would see her die. At worst, she would simply disappear into the detention levels and never come out. She's not an it, and she's not property, Jake said. Her name is Zara, and she's under my protection as captain of this vessel. Vexquin's 4 eyes narrowed. Your protection means nothing here, human. This is a Vorthok-administered station operating under Galactic Trade Federation Charter. Your sentimental attachment to waste dwellers carries no legal weight. Actually, it does. Lisa appeared beside Jake with a datapad in her hands. I've been reviewing the station charter and the Galactic Accords on refugee rights. Any being who claims asylum with a registered vessel captain has the right to safe passage to their chosen destination. Asylum? Vexquin laughed, a sound like grinding metal. From what? The creature was living freely on our station. No one was hunting it or threatening it. No one was feeding it either, Jake replied, or giving it shelter or medical care or treating it like a sentient being. That constitutes persecution under Section 12 of the Humanitarian Accords. The administrator's skin grew even darker. You humans and your ridiculous emotional responses. The creature is genetically non-viable. Its species is extinct. Keeping it alive serves no purpose except to waste resources. Jake stepped forward and Zara saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. Every person's life has purpose. The fact that you can't see that says more about you than it does about her. I am ordering you to surrender the creature immediately, or face confiscation of your vessel and cancellation of your trading permits. I'm ordering you to get off my ship. The tension in the air grew thick enough to taste. The security guards shifted nervously and put their hands on their weapons. Zara knew she should run or hide or find some way to escape, but her feet felt frozen to the deck. Then something unexpected happened. Susan's voice came over the comm system, but she was not talking to anyone on Jake's ship. New Horizons calling cargo vessel Starbound, come in Captain Rodriguez. A new voice crackled through the speakers, speaking with the same accent that Pete used. This is Rodriguez. What can I do for you, Susan? We have a situation here, Pete. Station administrator trying to confiscate a refugee who's claimed asylum. Could use some backup from fellow humans. On my way, 18 minutes. Vexquin looked confused. What is the meaning of this? You cannot call in outside vessels to interfere with station business. Actually, we can, Lisa replied, still reading from her datapad. Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Clause allows registered captains to request assistance when facing unlawful seizure of personnel or cargo. Rodriguez here, another voice joined the conversation. Heard you folks might need some help. Captain Walsh and the Endeavor are in System 2 if you need more support. This is Walsh, a woman's voice added. Just finished a supply run to the outer colonies. Happy to assist fellow humans in need. Vexquin's skin was now so dark it was almost black. This is absurd. You're mobilizing an entire fleet over one worthless alien. She's not worthless, Jake said quietly. And we're not mobilizing a fleet. We're just asking our friends to make sure everything stays legal and proper. Through the porthole, Zara could see other ships beginning to approach the station. They were human vessels of various sizes, from small cargo runners like Jake's ship to larger passenger transports. Each one that arrived made Vexquin's expression grow more sour. You cannot protect it forever, the administrator warned. Eventually you will have to dock somewhere else, trade with other species, follow other laws. When that happens, we will be waiting. Maybe, Jake replied, but right now she's safe. And sometimes right now is all you can ask for. Pete chose that moment to appear from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands. Hey, boss, that power coupling you wanted me to check is running smooth as silk. Oh, hello, Administrator. Didn't know we had company. His easy smile and casual tone made the whole confrontation seem less threatening, as if Jake regularly faced down angry officials and it was no big deal. Vexquin realized he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. This is not over, Morrison. The Trade Federation will hear about this interference. I'm sure they will, Jake agreed. Make sure you tell them the whole story, including the part where you tried to treat a refugee like cargo. After the administrator and his guards left, Jake turned to Zara with an expression she could not quite read. I'm sorry you had to see that. I know it was frightening. Why did those other humans come? She asked. They do not know me. I am nothing to them. You're something to me, Jake replied. And that makes you something to them. When humans see one of their own standing up for what's right, they stand with them. It's just how we are. Lisa was still studying her datapad. This refugee status gives us some legal protection, but it's not permanent. Eventually, we'll need to find somewhere safe for Zara to go, somewhere she can build a real life. What if I don't want to go anywhere? Zara asked quietly. What if I want to stay with you? Jake and Lisa looked at each other, and Zara saw a whole conversation pass between them without words. Finally, Jake smiled. Well, we could always use another crew member. Someone small who can get into tight spaces and fix things that need fixing. Someone who knows about living in difficult places and making do with what you have. You would let me stay? Really? If you want to stay, then this is your home now, Jake said simply. Family takes care of family, and your family now? 6 months after joining Jake's crew, Zara had grown stronger and healthier than she had been in years. Her pale blue skin had regained its natural color, and her violet eyes sparkled with intelligence and hope. She had become an expert at crawling through the ship's tight spaces to repair systems that Pete's larger hands could not reach, but more importantly, she had started to remember things she thought were lost forever. Ancient Cytherian knowledge that her parents had taught her when she was small began coming back in dreams and quiet moments. Mathematical formulas and energy equations that her people had developed over thousands of years slowly rebuilt themselves in her mind. Jake, look at this, she said one evening as she showed him a datapad covered with complex calculations. My people discovered something important about energy conversion. Something that could change how ships travel through space. Jake studied the equations with wonder. His knowledge of advanced physics was limited, but he could see that what Zara had written was far beyond anything the current galactic civilizations used. Are you sure about these numbers? He asked. This looks like it could revolutionize space. Travel. The theory is sound, Zara replied. My people tested it on small scales before the star collapse. But we never had time to build full-size engines. Lisa appeared in the doorway with a concerned expression. We just received a priority message from Galactic Command. They want to meet with us at the next station we dock at. Something about Zara's refugee status. Jake's face darkened. What kind of meeting? The formal kind with officials and lawyers and people who want to ask lots of questions, Lisa replied. Apparently word has gotten out about our passenger and certain parties are very interested in speaking with her. Zara felt the familiar cold fear creeping up her spine. They want to take me away, don't they? Now that I might be useful to them. Not if I can help it, Jake said firmly. Your crew now. That means something. 2 days later, they docked at Meridian Station where a delegation of Galactic Trade Federation officials waited for them. The meeting room was filled with beings from a dozen different species, all wearing expensive clothes and carrying important-looking datapads. The head of the delegation was a Zephyrion who sparkled with cold light as she spoke. We understand that you have been harboring a Cytherian survivor who may possess valuable technological knowledge. I have been providing refuge to a person who was starving and homeless, Jake corrected. Her name is Zara, and she's a member of my crew. Yes, of course, the Zephyrian replied with a sound like breaking glass that might have been laughter. We are not here to cause trouble, Captain Morrison. We simply wish to offer the young Cytherian a better life than she can have on a small cargo vessel. A Vorthic official leaned forward in his chair. The Federation is prepared to offer her full citizenship, luxury accommodations, and a position as Chief Cultural Advisor for Extinct Species Research. She would have access to the finest laboratories and the most advanced equipment. In exchange for what? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Her cooperation in developing certain technologies that her people may have discovered, the Zephyrian admitted. Technologies that could benefit all the civilized species of the galaxy. Zara had been sitting quietly throughout the meeting, but now she stood up. Her small frame seemed to fill the room with presence and dignity. 6 months ago, I was dying in the lower decks of Kepler Station, she said in clear galactic standard. Nobody cared about me then. Nobody offered me citizenship or luxury accommodations or important positions. I was just worthless trash that needed to be swept away. The officials shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Several of them had the grace to look ashamed. Now you discover that I might have something you want, and suddenly I am valuable, Zara continued. Suddenly I deserve to live and be safe and be treated with respect. But what about the next refugee who has nothing to offer you? What about the next dying species that creates no useful technology? This is different, the Vorthak protested. You have knowledge that could advance civilization. All beings have knowledge, Zara replied. All beings have wisdom and experience, and stories worth preserving. The fact that mine might make you rich does not make me more deserving of life than any other refugee. Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched her speak. This was not the frightened, starving child he had found 6 months ago. This was a young woman who had found her voice and was not afraid to use it. What are you proposing? Zephyrian asked. Carefully, Zara looked at Jake and he nodded encouragingly. They had discussed this possibility during the journey to Meridian Station. I will share my people's knowledge freely with all species, Zara said. But not just with the Trade Federation. I want the technology to be available to everyone, including the small colonies and refugee settlements that you normally ignore. That's impossible, the Vorthak sputtered. Advanced technology requires proper oversight and regulation. Advanced technology requires wisdom and compassion, Zara corrected. Things that seem to be in short supply among your Federation. And what do you want in return for this generous gift? The Zephyrian asked with obvious sarcasm. I want the Council to establish a new department dedicated to protecting endangered species and refugee populations. I want real resources devoted to finding survivors of supposedly extinct civilizations. And I want humans to be given full membership in the galactic community with all the rights and privileges that come with it. The room erupted in surprised chatter as the various officials discussed this unexpected demand. Finally, the Zephyrian called for order. You would do all this for the humans? They are just one small species with no significant power or influence. Zara smiled, and Jake saw echoes of the ancient wisdom that her people had carried for millennia. They are the only species that cared about me when I was powerless and had nothing to offer, she said simply. They helped me because it was right, not because it was profitable. If you want my knowledge, you will learn to value beings the way humans do, all beings, not just the useful ones. The negotiations continued for hours, but in the end the Federation had little choice. Zara's technology was too valuable to lose. And her conditions were not unreasonable. Just unprecedented. As they left the meeting room, Jake put his hand on Zara's shoulder. You know, you didn't have to do that for us. We would have supported. No matter what you decided. I know, Zara replied. That's exactly why I had to do it. 2 years later, Kepler Station looked very different from the place where Jake had first found Zara cowering in the corridors. The lower decks had been converted into comfortable housing units and community spaces for refugees from across the galaxy. What had once been maintenance shafts and storage areas now buzzed with the sounds of children playing and families rebuilding their lives. Zara stood on the observation deck of her new ship, the Cytherian Hope, watching as another group of refugees arrived at the station. These were Maltari survivors from a world that had been consumed by a plague, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and the desperate hope that someone might care about their fate. Ready for another rescue mission? Jake asked as he joined her at the viewing window. His hair was grayer now, and his face showed the lines that came from years of difficult decisions, but his eyes still held the same kindness that had saved her life, always, Zara replied with a smile. How many this time? 37 adults and 22 children, Lisa reported from the communications console. The Federation tagged them as non-viable 6 months ago. But our contacts in the outer colonies say they're skilled farmers and engineers. Pete looked up from the navigation controls. Course laid in for the Maltari refugee camp, boss. Should arrive in 4 days if we push the new engines. The new engines were based on Cytherian technology, but improved by human engineering and powered by fusion cores designed by the best minds from a dozen different species. They were faster, cleaner, and more efficient than anything the galaxy had seen before. More importantly, the plans were freely available to anyone who wanted to build them. Susan activated the ship's communication array and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Captain Susan Davis of the Refugee Transport, Cytherian Hope. We are en route to pick up the Multari survivors and bring them to safe harbor. Any vessels in the area willing to assist with escort duties, please respond." Within minutes, responses came flooding in from human ships throughout the sector. Captain Rodriguez with his cargo vessel, Captain Walsh with her passenger transport, and a dozen others all volunteered to help protect the refugee convoy. "Still surprises me sometimes," Lisa commented, "how quickly humans respond when someone needs help." "It surprised me too at first," Zara admitted. "But now I think it's just who you are. You see someone in trouble and you help. No questions, no negotiations, no demands for payment. You just help because it's right." The Cytherian Hope was the flagship of a small fleet of refugee rescue ships, all crewed by humans and sponsored by the Galactic Refugee Protection Agency that Zara had convinced the Federation to establish. In 2 years, they had saved over 10,000 beings from worlds that other species had written off as lost causes, but the real victory was not in the numbers. It was in the way the galaxy had slowly started to change its attitude toward the displaced and forgotten. Other species had begun to notice that helping refugees often brought unexpected benefits. Former outcasts became valuable citizens who contributed new ideas and solutions to old problems. "Message coming in from Galactic Command," Susan announced. "Priority transmission for Zara?" The view screen flickered to life, showing the crystal form of Administrator Vel Kara, the Zephyrian who now headed the Refugee Protection Agency. Her light patterns were warm and welcoming, very different from the cold official who had once tried to claim ownership of Zara's knowledge. "Greetings, Zara. I have excellent news to report. Our deep space scouts have located a group of Alterian survivors in the Outer Rim, 43 individuals who have been living in hiding for 8 years, afraid that the galaxy had forgotten them." Zara felt her heart skip with joy. The Alterians had been declared extinct after their homeworld was destroyed in a civil war. Finding survivors meant that another species would have a chance to rebuild and continue their culture. "Where are they now?" she asked. "Asteroid mining station in the Vega system." "They've been working as indentured laborers, barely surviving on starvation wages. The mining company claims they own the Alterians' work contracts and refuses to release them." Jake's expression hardened. "Slavery is illegal under galactic law. The company claims the Alterians are not legally persons since their species is classified as extinct. Therefore, the usual protections do not apply." "Then we change the classification," Zara said simply. "Emergency reclassification based on confirmed survivors. I still have some influence with the Council." "Already in progress," Valkara replied with a sparkle that indicated pleasure. The Council voted unanimously to restore the Alterians to protected species status. The mining company has been ordered to release them immediately and pay compensation for years of illegal labor. As the transmission ended, Pete began calculating a new course to the Vega system. "Can make it in 6 days if we skip the planned maintenance stop at Rigel Station." "Do it," Zara said without hesitation. "The Alterians have waited long enough to be free." And the next few hours were spent in preparation for another rescue mission. Medical supplies were loaded, temporary housing was prepared, and food stores were checked to make sure they could feed 43 new passengers until they reached a safe colony world. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, Zara found herself thinking about the scared, hungry child she had been when Jake first found her. That girl could never have imagined that she would one day command her own ship and lead missions to save entire species from extinction, but more than that, she thought about what Jake had taught her about the value of caring for others. The lesson that had seemed so strange when she first heard it now felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Jake," she said as they stood together on the bridge watching the stars stream past. "Do you ever regret picking me up that day? Your life would have been simpler if you had just walked away." Jake was quiet for a moment, considering her question seriously. "You know what I regret?" he finally said. "I regret that it took me 3 days on that station before I noticed you needed help. I regret that you had to suffer alone for 3 years before someone finally cared enough to do something about it. But not rescuing me? Never that. Rescuing you was the best thing I ever did. Not because of the technology or the agency or any of the good that came after. Just because you deserve to be rescued. Every person deserves to have someone who cares about them." Through the view screen, Zara could see the distant glow of the Vega system growing brighter as they approached. Soon they would meet the Alterian survivors and offer them the same thing Jake had offered her years ago: safety, dignity, and proof that someone in the vast galaxy cared about their fate. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For showing me that nobody has to be alone. For teaching me that caring about others is not a weakness, it's the strongest thing any being can do." Jake smiled and put his arm around her shoulders in the gesture that humans use to show affection for their family members. "You taught me something too," he said. "You taught me that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the entire galaxy. All it takes is one person willing to care when nobody else will." Outside the ship, the stars continued their eternal dance through the darkness of space. But inside the Catherian Hope, beings from dozens of worlds worked together to bring light to the forgotten corners of the galaxy, one rescue at a time.